Morning children, it's Mrs. Lee here. It's assembly number 10, 5, one more, 16. Gosh, we're racing through, aren't we? Right, let's start with what's the time, Mr. Wolf? Let's have a look at the minute hand, the long hand, and see where it is. It's on the 4. Now, yesterday I was talking about increments of 5, wasn't I? When we were doing our tallies, if we're outside looking at the birds. Right, here we go. Let's count in increments of 5. So, 5, 10, 15, 20. So if the minute hand, the long hand is on the 4, we're talking about minutes. There are 20 minutes that have gone past the hour. So it was o'clock, now it's 20 minutes past. If we look to the hour hand, we can find out what hour is gone past. And the hour hand is just moving slightly off the 10. So that means it is 20 past 10. 20 past 10. Well, if it's 20 past 10 in the morning, that probably means that you're up and about. But if it's 20 past 10 at night, you should be fast asleep. So that takes us to the language of the month, and the word that we were learning yesterday, Mrs. Lee is trying to say, is bird, but in Lithuanian, and that is pauktis. Pauktis. Oh, I hope I'm saying that correctly. That takes us over to the Makaton side of the week, which is bird, bird. So we've done our board now. Did you manage to get outside yesterday and start having a look for the different birds that are in your gardens? I do hope so. If you wanted to have a quick look at this. How exciting is this? This is a bird's nest. Now, I found this quite a long time ago. It's been in our school for quite a while, looking after it. Inside, there's some eggs. They're not real eggs, they're just little Easter eggs. Let me have a little look. If you can see inside, I think birds are so clever that they can create a nest out of all found things. Last week, we were watching Neve and Miss Denning White, and they were outside grabbing lots of things, and they were making pictures, and that's what the bird son's created. It's actually created its own little home. So that's a little nest. Hope you've been outside and had a little look around. In a few moments we're going to watch a video, and I'm really excited about sharing this because Mrs. Short went down to her stables and is going to show you her horses and what she has to do every day to keep them nice and, here we go, nice and safe and healthy. All right, so I thought we could have a story today, and I have looked and looked around the school for books about horses, and there are a few, but they're not very inspiring. But I did see some stories about donkeys, and wow, I was going to read you A. Milne story about Eeyore, who's a little donkey, but it's quite long, so I've tried to find a shorter one, and it's in this book. It's called Animal Stories, and there's not a lot of pictures, so you're going to have to use your imagination, but it's a really lovely story. It's about Fred, and Fred is a donkey, and he lives on a farm. Actually, he lives near some stables, and in the stables there are some horses, and they are race horses. So they're very fine animals that are taken out to go and race against each other. Anyway, should we listen to the story? Okay. Fred the donkey stood by the thistles in the corner of his field. It was getting lighter. He was watching for the sun to come up. Any minute now, it would show above the line of the downs, and day would be here. Fred took a deep breath. This was his moment. At the first slice of sun slid above the hills, he opened his mouth wide and he shouted a welcome. Ee-oh! 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 Curled up in their beds where they lived next door in the stables, the stable lads pulled the blankets over their heads to shut out Fred's braying. Cross words filled the air. What a racket! And in the big house where the racehorse trainer lived, his wife heaved a duvet over her ears. Do something about that donkey, she said. Fred put his head down and he cropped the grass, happy that the day had started well. Bumps and bangs were coming from the stable block. The lads were getting up. Fred loved watching the string of horses going past his field. Just beyond the gate, they had to cross the road to reach the open downs where their gallops began. Fred munched, waiting. Soon he heard the clop of hooves across the yard and along the road, and his grey ears came forward as the lead horse, called Dark Dancer, came into sight. Duck Dancer. Fred took another deep breath and shouted Donkey Store, Watcher! But it didn't come out as Watcher, it came out as Eeyore! Duck Dancer jumped at the sudden noise and the other horses behind went up on their toes and pranced sideways. The stable lads shouted more cross words as they tried to keep the horses in line. They had just gotten calmed down and were clip-clopping over the road to start the gallop when Fred shouted again, Have a good run! But again it came out as Eeyore! Dark Dancer's nostrils flared and he chucked his head up and down. He'd like to go back and say hello, but his rider made him go on. Fred watched the race horses canter off, break into a gallop and disappear over the hill. How fast they were, how graceful. Fred knew that they were special and worth a lot of money. He'd seen them in a horse box with the training stable's name painted on the side and horses written on the back. He was ever so envious. Fred put his head down though and nosed about among the thistles of fresh grass. He wished he was special. He was just an old donkey in an ordinary field, and the only thing he could do that they couldn't do was make a very loud noise. And even that made people very unhappy. It made Fred feel a bit sad that he didn't please very many people. He'd never been in a horse box, let alone with a name on the side. God. Later that day, the horses came back. Fred didn't even lift his head. Oh, he was tired of everybody being fed up with him. But that night, something happened. It was as quiet could be. Everybody was asleep. And suddenly Fred was awoken by some headlights of a big horse truck blazing across the grass. The truck came into the field and did a U-turn and stopped just inside the gate. Fred could see its red tail lights. They could hear men whispering. And the ramp at the back of the truck was let down. Fred stood very still. He was frightened. They were coming to take him away. But no, they went past him and over to the stables. Fred's long, furry ears strained for sound. He heard more whispers, the creak of a door, and then a long silence. Fred watched the gate. The truck was still there, but in darkness. And then Fred saw the outline of a horse moving along the far side of the hedge towards it. That's funny. There weren't any clip-clops of the hooves. And then he saw it was Dark Dancer, and he was being led into the field, and someone had wrapped something over his eyes. How dare they, thought Fred. They're trying to steal him. And he took a deep breath, and he shouted out, It's all right, Dark Dancer, I'm here, it's Fred. But remember, he was a donkey, so it came out, Ee-haw, 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 ee-haw. The noise filled the whole of the space. Dark Dancer reared up on its hind legs. The rope was yanked out of the man's hand. Cross words filled the air. The light came on in the big house and another one in the stable block. A man ran for the driving cab. Fred heard a shout, Let's get out of here! The ramp was raised, a door slammed and the engine churned. And the truck shot off through the gate without any headlights and roared off into the night. An alarm bell was ringing and the lights shone out around the stable yard. Every window in the house lit up. Fred trotted over to Dark Dancer, who was standing trembling by the gate, and snuffled a welcome. He led him over to the sheltered corner, well out of the beam of lights, so that he wouldn't be afraid. The blindfold had come off, but Dark Dancer still had pieces of cloth wrapped around his hooves, so that they would make no sound when the thieves would try to lead him away. Fred stood behind him and kept him calm. Well, all night there was comings and goings in the stable yard. A police car arrived with flashing blue lights, and then there was sirens, so that Dark Dancer was frightened all over again. But at last things quietened down, and the two animals dozed off in their dark corner of the field. When morning came, Fred knew that he still had to do his usual job, so he opened his mouth and lifted his head. Ee-haw! Ee-haw! But this time Dark Dancer had seen it coming, and he wasn't afraid. Fred was his friend. Fred was amazed to see the stable lad had come running across the field. You little darling, he shouted. Fred was a bit confused. There's Dark Dancer, safe as houses all the time, and we were thinking he'd been thieved. Shout away, my darling. That's a lovely, lovely voice you've got. We'll never have another word said against it. That sweet music tells us Dancer's safe, you little treasure. And he kissed Fred's furry ears. 2 days later, when Dark Dancer was loaded into the box for a big race, Fred went too, to keep him calm. Dark Dancer won, and when it was time to go home, nobody laughed when the trainer picked up a chalk and added 2 words underneath the horse's sign on the back. And a great cheer went up, for he had written, "And Fred." I don't know if you can see that. Oh, that was a lovely story, wasn't it, about friendship? Well done, Fred. Sometimes we might have an annoying thing, but actually it can work out and be quite good. So Fred's annoying "ee-oh" that he didn't like actually saved a day, didn't it? Right, Mrs. Lee's going to stop talking now. Thank you for listening to this story. I'll be back at the end after we've gone to the stables.
Good morning, everybody. Mrs. Short here. I'm at the stables where our horses live. Here we have Nika. Here we have Vienza. Vienza's a baby. She's only 2 years old, but she's a very big baby. And here we have Tommy. And Tommy's 10 years old. They're all a bit grumpy because they want to go out and eat their breakfast. This is inside one of our stables. We have to make their beds every day. It doesn't look like your bed at home, does it? Because their bed is made of shavings and straw. And we have to clean it every day. And we have to use a shavings fork and a brush and a wheelbarrow. And we have to make it tidy by taking out the horse's droppings. Horse's droppings is called manure, and we put it in the wheelbarrow to make the bed all nice and neat and tidy. Horses eat hay, lots of hay, and in winter what we have to do, we have to put hot water, boiling water on the hay, and it's called steaming the hay, and this gets rid of all the dust and any nasty bits that could be on the hay. And we put a lid on to keep it nice and warm. And there's my stable cat. He's called High Five. High Five. So now our stables are all clean. We've got nice clean hay for them to eat for their tea, and we've got nice fresh water which they have to have each day. Bye.
Wow, that was really good, wasn't it? Though, thank you to Mrs. Short for telling us all about the horses at her stable. Hard work. Mrs. Short has to do that every day. Oh, she's good, isn't she? Right, we're going to finish there with our school prayer. Right, help me to do the things I should, to be to others kind and good, in all my work and all my play, to grow more loving every day. Amen. Help me to do the things I should. That's exactly what Fred did, didn't he, in the story? He did the thing that he should, which was make a lot of noise, and he frightened away those thieves. Right, have a lovely, lovely day. I hope that you can get out and have a little look, and maybe you can see some of the birds in the big garden bird watch, yes? And I will see you in one sleep. Bye.